have an interesting story across the wire yesterday. It comes from former NBA player Nate Robinson. He told Bleacher Report about his struggles with depression, said the source of the depression was the NBA, specifically name-checking a former coach. From the article, while in therapy, Robinson questioned himself and God. He wondered if he should have pursued football instead, opened up about struggles few knew about, like the time he said Brown, allegedly Larry Brown, referred to him daily as the little. On another occasion, Robinson came into Brown's office crying, telling his coach to stop demeaning him. 10 minutes later, in front of the team, Brown called Robinson the little again and shared that he had cried. So Jalen, you played for Larry Brown twice. One of those times actually was with the Knicks with Nate Robinson. Was this something that Larry Brown was known to be doing?
Well, this is a lot to unpack there.
Yep.
A couple of things. Nate's like a little brother to me, and when he played with Larry Brown, as you mentioned, I was on the team, and I don't specifically remember this instance, but I have to say this in defense of Larry Brown and defense of basketball. While Nate was dealing with depression, basketball has done so very much for all of us. Okay, so I just have to say that first and foremost. But Larry Brown is the kind of coach, a terrific Hall of Fame coach, the only coach that won a championship in college and in the pros. But he is the kind of coach that loves everybody that isn't on his team. That's just his personality, which is why he probably coached, 8 or 9 teams in the NBA, and he developed a term that Peter Vesey gave him that I loved called Next Town Brown, because his word would wear thin on the group of individuals, and then he would run out of players to the point where he had to leave. And so that's how he ended up getting so many jobs. And coaching is very tough on a professional level. You have to know the difference between patting a player on the back and kicking them in the butt. Larry was a combination of both, and it's unfortunate that this happened for Nate, but I'm glad he went on to have a really long career.
The part of this that I also think is interesting is the way the public perception of depression is changing in our society. I know a good deal about it. I've said it many times. I don't make any secret of it. And I'm not a doctor. I'm a patient. So I can't pretend that I understand exactly what's going on in anyone else's life. But I do think it is extremely healthy that people like Kevin Love and others are bringing this matter to the forefront in pro basketball today, so that in all places, if a player or an employee of any kind goes to someone and says, this is really bothering me, what you are doing is affecting me in a way beyond what you understand. The old school notion, if I'm going to break you down, a kick in the butt instead of a pat on the back, that there are some people for whom you're now taking that further than they're capable of going. And that isn't their fault. And on some level, it's yours. I'm not suggesting that you're doing this in a sadistic way or anything, but I think that there is a greater, more nuanced understanding of that is starting to emerge in professional sports today, and I think that is a very, very good thing.
Do you really think that they're starting to understand it, or do you think that we've just sort of reached a point where a couple of names, DeMar DeRozan, as you mentioned, Kevin Love, have come out and started to talk about mental health and the struggles that they deal with? Because at the end of the day, I'd be shocked if it wasn't so many more people that are dealing with this on a daily basis, but we've just either been trained, whether it be the way we were grown up or the way we were raised, to think like, oh, just get over it, you're sad, this and that. And it doesn't always happen to be that. It happens to be a chemical thing. But I don't necessarily know that those in power are starting to understand that. And that's ultimately who has to get it, whether it be from the GM down and the coaches. If you have a coach that doesn't understand the nuances and how depression works, you're kind of on an island until you find somebody who does get it. And I wonder how many of those guys actually are starting to understand this better.
Absolutely, great point. And having longevity in professional sports can be a blood sport in theory, because it's dog eat dog. They're constantly finding ways and reasons to replace you, accentuating your strengths when you have them, but obviously acknowledging all of your flaws and weaknesses and picking you apart at every chance. And for somebody to play for Larry Brown, and again, no shots to him, I'm just relaying a true story, he tried to get me out of the league. Like, there was a time my 3rd year when I got traded to the Pacers, he brought me in the office and he was like, Chris Webber and Juwan Howard are trending this way. Ray Jackson and Jimmy King are trying to figure out which way they're going. I'm going to determine what's going to happen with your career. And I stood up and left the office like, no, you're not. And this is a true story. I got 15 DNPs that season, okay? And it was a point where when you show up at the game, there are things that can happen behind the scenes where fans like, why he ain't playing? What's going on? And you can be like, oh, you're not working harder. You not have a good attitude or whatever. I had to show up to practice early. I had to try to do the best I can to make a name for myself with the teammates, because players in the locker room know that you're competing in practice, but the coach ain't putting you in the game.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you respond that way? When he said, look, the Fab Five, these two guys are stars, these two guys aren't going to make it in the league, I'm here. I could have interpreted that, and again, I wasn't in the conversation, as him saying, listen, follow me and I will make sure you go in this direction rather than the other. That's obviously not the way you took it.
Well, he was already leading me down a path of destruction.
So there was a distrust you already had going in.
Correct. Well, there were times in practice I wasn't playing, okay, let alone the game. Like, he was trying to mentally destroy me. He was trying to create a character flaw in me to make me lash out at him. Like, throw a basketball, want to fight the coach. Because he didn't like me. He didn't like me. And so that's what happens in sports. And I'm not crying for any sympathy in any way, shape, or form. But that team didn't make the playoffs in 1998, 97. That team didn't make the playoffs. The next season, we're predominantly the same roster. We played in the Eastern Conference Finals against Jordan and the Bulls. And he wasn't the coach. Larry Bird was.